A few weeks ago, a fan-made expansion was released to Celeste, adding even more levels, challenges, and new mechanics to it. I was debating if I wanted to play it, but looking at the release of it brought back up the conversation in my mind about assist modes and assist features in games. And for today's critical thought, I want to talk about the correct way to approach having assist modes in your title, and why, no matter how accessible or approachable your game may be with them, it does not correct pain points or bad design elements. So we spoke about assist modes and these kinds of designs about last year, I believe, in various posts and videos. And the idea of using an assist mode is still a very great way of smoothing or easing the difficulty curve of a game and allowing more people to play it. Sometimes an assist mode can be ways of simply tweaking various aspects of a game, reducing the amount of hunger you can have, making things less scary, or you can go the full-on Game Genie style, or just give you every super cheat available in the book, and have fun with your game. And when assist modes are treated like that, it can be a really great way again of allowing anyone to play through your game. So one of the reasons I wanted to make this video was to kind of clarify and expand on my thoughts from when I last thought about this last year. Assist modes and options like this work the best when they are there to provide an aid for a player or someone who's having trouble. But here's the major point, and this was something I don't think I really got across the last time we spoke about this. You do not want to balance your game under the assumption that the assist modes or assist features will somehow rectify or exempt any kind of pain points or issues with your title. And this is something that's very hard, I think, for developers to understand. If you have these options, such as super jump, infinite jump, invincibility, and all that, you may think that players are going to immediately use them if there's any problems. But one of the things that we have seen, especially when it comes to examining churn rates in games, is that most players are not going to turn to an assist mode or a secondary feature to get them through a game. If they get stuck, they're going to quit. And they will mostly leave a very bad and negative review of your game. And one of the things you have to understand about good assist modes and kind of designing these systems is that you want to make them as blatantly obvious as you can when it comes to designing your UI UX. It may seem very quaint to just put up a big sign that says, if you have trouble, turn on these modes. But it's very easy to miss them, and not every player is going to examine your options, and not every game is even going to have the same exact assist modes and assist features. One of the best points about Celeste was if you wanted to play the game 100% assist free, the game said go nuts. If you wanted to play with every assist feature turned on, all the infinite jumping and infinite damage and infinite dashes that you wanted, developers said, sure, why not? And again, the game made no attempt to hide any of these aspects. And this is a very important point to get across. For a lot of video games, especially those that are very reflex driven, it can be hard as a player to kind of examine why they're having trouble, and is the game providing them with a way or a means of getting around it. Earlier in 2022, we played through the game Young Souls, which was an action RPG / beat 'em up. And one of the problems that I had with the game was that it became very punishing to try and avoid damage when you're playing as a solo player, and the fact that you couldn't necessarily get out of an attack animation, and the only way for you to kind of animation cancel was through dodging, which was limited based on stamina. And because you're playing, or if you're playing it as a single person, everything is going to be targeting you. It became, or it reached the point where I just was getting so frustrated, I just said, you know what? I need to lower the difficulty. And then lo and behold, in the options menu, we found an assist mode option to basically allow you to cancel out of attack animations. And this is one of those major points. A normal consumer, if they're frustrated with a game or they're having problems with it, they're not going to look for this stuff. Unless you already tell them right at the beginning that, hey, if you're having trouble with this, and this, these options are available to disable them or make them easier, they're going to leave. And this is the other major point. This is something I didn't really talk about the last time we discussed assist modes and assist features. That it's not good design to knowingly have a problem with your game or knowingly have a pain point or churn element and then say, well, if we just have an assist mode, then anyone who has a problem can just turn it on or disable it and problem solved. And this is not a good mindset to have when it comes to balancing and building the UI UX of your title. Because as I've said over the last few minutes, people aren't going to want to fix your issues for you or turn things on or off. A lot of players just want to hit start, play the game, when it's over, turn it off, game over, move on to something else. They don't want to dig into your game to try and figure out how to solve an issue, especially if it's one that you already know about. And you see, this is one of the major aspects of trying to change the approach of difficulty and approachability features. As I've said before, one of the problems with difficulty settings in and themselves is that if you're just changing numbers or stats around, that oftentimes doesn't change the problem or the churn rate itself. If someone is having problems with the reaction time of a parry or not being able to properly see any kind of indications on screen, giving them 20% more health, making the enemy do 10% less damage, is not going to fix that issue. You are essentially just trying to put a band-aid over a giant hole in a boat. So what we have seen when it comes to the rise of progressive difficulty options, ascension modes, player-defined or player-selected difficulty systems, is that you don't want to make your normal experience anywhere near frustrating or filled with pain points or masochistically difficult in any way, shape, or form. Normal should be the intended experience. And that can, again, I think a lot of developers are very nervous about saying what is considered intended for your game. Because you see, when the player loads things up, especially if they're a new player or just a general consumer, they want to be given kind of the average experience. What is it just going to be? Again, hit start, turn on new game, we're off to the races. People who want to push things higher or push things lower should have those respective options. But you want to design your normal experience with as low of a difficulty floor or a skill curve as you can. As the old adage goes, it's easier to catch flies with honey than it is vinegar. If people want to make your normal experience harder, have those options available. Because not only does this kind of hide what could be potentially churn issues from your game, but it also makes your higher difficulties more interesting. Because you don't just want to say, okay, on hard difficulty, everybody does 85% more damage to you and we call it a day. You want to have your difficulty actually matter. And you want to, again, avoid putting things that you know are punishing, that you know are going to frustrate people as your baseline. Because if they view that as your baseline, they're not going to try and solve this through assist modes or approachability features. They're going to quit, leave you a negative review, and refund your game if there's enough time. A great example of this kind of mindset of balancing the challenge would be from Doom Eternal. Doom Eternal featured multiple difficulty levels. I believe it was easy, normal, hard, nightmare. I don't count Ultra Nightmare because that's just hardcore difficulty. The game is designed the same way on normal as it is on easy, as it is on nightmare. You're doing the same arena fights, you're fighting the same arena or monster battles. Nothing about the experience is diluted in terms of the core gameplay loop. The main difference with each difficulty in Doom Eternal is the aggressiveness of the enemies. You are able to make far more mistakes on easy and normal than you are on hard and nightmare, or on nightmare no mistakes in some of those situations. And the point about this, and why Doom Eternal does a great job of training the player, is that if you're playing the game on normal and you are doing a fantastic job, you are managing all your ammo, you are jumping, running, ripping and tearing and all that, you could probably bump that up to hard or even nightmare, and you may not even notice that there's any additional difficulty because you're that good. Conversely, if you're having trouble with the game, you can make the enemies less aggressive, you can make them do less damage. So that if you're stuck in a particular spot or you need some better practice, you can have that. And if you want to raise things up or keep things lowered, it is entirely up to you. And this is again why you want to try and have or establish that baseline experience. And that kind of takes me to the other major point for this video, and how you want to approach assist modes and how you don't want to do it. As I said earlier, you don't want to view assist modes as this kind of magical solve that will alleviate any issues that you leave in your game. What you want to look at as an assist mode, I have a really good analogy for this, and also is one of the many useless trivias that I know in my head. I watched quite a bit of those gold mining shows on Discovery Channel over the past decade, and their sluice machine or sluice device or whatever they use to get the gold and kind of go through it, they have a piece or a part on that device known as a nugget trap. And the nugget trap is at the end of kind of like the long sluice bar or the sluice ramp that's going through all the material. And this piece's job is to be the final catch of any gold that the other parts of the line are missing. And on one hand, it's good that they have this feature, but every miner on the show knows that there should never be any gold in the nugget trap, because that is considered the contingency. It is the fail-safe. And that's how you want to treat assist modes in your game. They should not be how you're balancing your game. They should not be how you're trying to fine-tune or build your game around their use. They are the contingency plan. They are the fail-safe. They are the kind of last line, the rail guard of your experience. You don't want people to use assist modes, because if they're using them, then it means that something else is going wrong with your game. And like we've said many times before, not every game is designed to appeal to 100% of the audience. What you don't want is to view if 80% of your player base needed to turn on infinite health. That is not a success for your game. That means something is wrong with a particular section, with a particular enemy or power or design that frustrated a lot of people. And if you treat your assist modes again as not a failsafe, but as part of the overall design, the overall balancing, you're not going to create a well-designed experience. You're going to create one that you're going to find a lot of people are going to churn out of your game, and you're going to have very little idea as to why. Why aren't people playing through my game if I give them infinite hits or auto win? Oftentimes the answer is that something about your general gameplay or particular aspect of it is frustrating them. So even if people play through it with the assist mode or auto win turned on, that's more of a bandage fix. And it also means that if you keep making those mistakes, you are really hurting the longevity of your games and the potential consumer bases. So as a final example of this, I played through last year 2 different RPGs, Ikenfell and Jackmove. Both of these games had the standard assist mode options of auto win battles. And I had to use both of them to finish those games, and without them, I wouldn't have finished them. So again, when I say it like that, a few of you are probably going to immediately say, well, That's proof the assist modes work. If they weren't in the game, Josh wasn't going to finish them. But you see, here's the problem with that kind of mindset. Having them doesn't alleviate the frustrations of those games. And that is not me just saying that or throwing shade. Both those titles have massive churn rates throughout their design. I believe Ikenfell has a 22 or maybe even less % of people who actually beat that game. And I don't know what Jack Move is off the top of my head. But both of these games had very different issues with their combat system and the difficulty or progression of it. And again, having this auto win feature was a very great idea, but if you don't learn why people are leaving your game, why they're finding it frustrating, and why they don't want to keep playing it, you're going to make those mistakes again. And on your next game or the game after that, you're going to find your consumer base has shrunk. Because the people who quit your game, who didn't even bother using assist modes, they're not going to give your next game or your game after that a second, third, fourth, fifth try. They're just going to remember the fact that, yeah, I played that game and I kind of frustrated, I just never played it. And they're not going to want to give your next game the time of day. And as I've said, assist modes are great design. They're great in a way of allowing you to fine-tune and, again, provide that fail-safe. If someone is just absolutely horrible at your game, if they have no idea what they're doing, they're just not getting it, maybe it is just a very huge difficulty spike for someone who may not be able to have it. But again, you have to understand what your audience is looking for, and you have to be able to figure out and clearly articulate to someone what is the intended way to play. Because if your intended way to play is a frustrating, pain point filled experience, you'll have people who will play through that. There are plenty of masochists who will play a very hard game no matter what. But the vast majority of people will just say, nope, and they're going to go on to something else. And if you want to have challenge, again, use that as having or creating different difficulty settings. A really solid example of that is what we see in Survival Crafters, where like a game like in Subnautica, you have your standard kind of experience which has the hunger, the thirst, and you have to deal with those survival elements. Or you can just play the game in sandbox mode and all that stuff gets turned off, and you can build your favorite under-the-sea base that you want. But again, the developer is clearly articulating sandbox mode is for the casual, no threats, no challenge experience. This is our standard way of playing. This is where you're going to have those challenges, where it's going to be hard in some aspects. And your game should still be balanced. Again, a great game should be balanced on easy mode, on normal, on hard, nightmare, ultra nightmare, super duper nightmare, masochistically ultra nightmare, and Josh mode as always. So with all that said, my question for you watching this is, can you think of some other examples of games that the assist modes did a fantastic job of getting someone through the game? And as another challenge, can you think of a game, and to make this a little bit complicated or a little bit harder, I don't want you to be including any of the Dark Souls games in this question or in this answer. Can you think of games that would have benefited from an assist mode or assist mode feature? And what would be the assist feature that you think would most help that game and most get consumers through it or alleviate churn rates or pain points? Let me know in the comments down below. Do the bell ringing, liking, subscribing, all that YouTube algorithm stuff. Check out our Discord and Patreon. If you're interested in my books on design, they are available, wherever books are being sold. And come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games.